Hello there. Welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing fabulously well. I'm doing fine, thank you very much. And all the better from hearing from you because I really love learning whereabouts you're from in the world. And isn't it extraordinary that despite the fact that we're all so far apart geographically, that we all can come together to listen to a story, whether you're in Norway, whether you're in Australia, whether you're in the UK, whether you're in America. We all can come together and listen to a fabulous story, and nothing in this world beats a great story. I've always believed that. I mean, I will prefer a story any day of the week to watching a television programme because there's something about a good story that really warms the cockles of your heart, and there's nothing that beats it. So I've got a fabulous story for you tonight. But before we get started, don't forget to get that quintessential drink because you might need something very refreshing. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell and the thumbs up. And let's get started with tonight's story. Dear Sarah and all your lovely listeners, I was tearing up to see Mrs. Beaver leaving my ranch, although I didn't want her to see me visibly upset, as it would make it all the more difficult for her to leave. Yet this loyal, fun-loving woman had been a beloved, much-loved fixture and fitting on my ranch for over 20 long years now, having moved into the southerly quarters of my abode to manage the domestic routine affairs of everyday life with an abundance of flair. I would come into my kitchen after a hard, grueling day's work, with the welcoming, inviting and treasured smells of home enveloping me with a cosy reassurance. I would see Mrs. Beaver standing over the range with a wooden spoon in her hands, stirring away vigorously at a bubbling cauldron of jam. You could smell the delicious aromas of blueberries, strawberries, thimbleberries, foaming and frothing in the sugar syrup. You could hear Mrs. Beaver cheerfully singing away to her heart's content in her pretty musical voice, like blue clear sky, happiest girl in the USA, and it's great to be alive. While my golden retriever, Golden Sun, always remained by her side diligently, lying strewn outstretched across the stone floor, a mass of buoyant, springy, strawberry blonde curls, wallowing in the gladsome presence of this jolly woman, who filled the house with her robust, sparkling, ebullient love, that was as infectious as it was delightful. To all intensive purposes, even my two rescue pussycats, Bobby Joe and Mercedes, had taken to lying on the voluptuous plushy settee, in the far corner of the well-appointed country-style kitchen, just to be close to this congenial, endearing woman, who was like a ray of sunshine on a freezing cold day, their comfort-seeking silken bodies luxuriating in the blissful warmth of a sunny Colorado morning. Mrs. Beaver had moved into the ranch seamlessly after my marriage to my wife Alexa had failed superbly. Why I had married a city slicker is beyond me, as Alexa was as comfortable with ranch life as I would be at home on a crowded beach. I think I was young and naive at the time, believing myself to be in love with this fickle young woman, who was pleasingly easy on the eye, but good looks, I was soon to learn, was not enduring. They could fade away as quickly as new curtains in the sunshine. I had blazingly ignored the wise warnings of my late father, who had assured me that Alexa was not cut out for ranch life, but I had refused to listen. "Look at her nails, son," my father had said. "They're fricking ridiculous. They look more like dangerous sharp knives than natural nails. They're covered in glitter like Christmas baubles on a Christmas tree. If that's not bad enough, I saw how dreadfully upset she got when one of her nails snapped. She looked utterly mortified. At first I thought something bad had happened. Asked her what the matter was. She said her nail had broken. I knew in that moment, son, she wasn't cut out for ranch life. You need a gal with a bit of grit behind her teeth, who's not adverse to getting some dirt under the fingernails, not pouncing around the ranch like the Queen of Sheba. Oh, it wouldn't surprise me if that gal of yours indulges in milk baths like Cleopatra, dips all her strawberries in melted chocolate. Son, we have got bigger fish to fry here on the ranch. Crying over a broken nail. Well, that doesn't wash with me. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous.
Your mother would be turning in her grave to witness such a sorry, pathetic and sad sight. If that's not bad enough, that woman can't cook a bloody thing. What kind of a ranch wife will she make? She's no domestic goddess, let me tell you. That meal she made last Tuesday night left something to be desired. What was it? It was chicken and dumplings, I think. The dumplings were so hard, I could have hit a hole in one with one of them on the golf course. No problem at all. As for that chicken, it was tougher than some of the crocodile hide cowboy boots I own. And believe me, son, those boots of mine are hell of a tough. She's just feminine, Pops, I had piped, trying to defend my wife-to-be's honour, but failing desperately in my lousy attempts. Feminine? Ha ha! My foot, laughed my father. You call a glitzy set of nails feminine? He snorted. In my book, son, a feminine woman is like a gentle doe, caring for her beloved fawn. A soft, loving, unassuming energy that is not demanding, but reassuring, kind. But Alexia, I think the only thing she cares about is Alexa. That's not feminine, son. That's narcissistic. My father had been right, not that I'd wanted to admit it at the time. Once we were married, I was assaulted daily by a crescendo of tireless complaints. I hate it here. It's so boring. There's nothing to do. Alexa would pipe, stamping her foot in annoyance like a petulant child, her lips pouting in a permanent sulk, her exasperated eyes rolling in her head like marbles on a floor. There were times she would pace up and down the house like a lion in a zoo enclosure, as if she was bored out of her skull. I assure you there was nothing even remotely boring about my ranch. With a little initiative, you could find a copious amount of things that needed doing. Furthermore, we didn't live too far from the town, where she could have got her hair done regularly, or even met up with a girlfriend or two for coffee from time to time. But in Alexa's case, she rose from bed at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, did nothing apart from a couple of workouts on television, following some strange blonde woman wearing a pink headband, complemented by a scintillating pink leotard, who Alexa thought had a body to die for. I didn't see it personally myself, but there you go. Whatever makes a girl happy, I suppose. Then there was the constant soaking in long bubble baths all day long, drinking large glasses of Cabernet Sauvignon, getting giggly and inebriated, where everything in the household suddenly became terribly funny. Then the rest of her day, into the late evening, she would be glued to her cell phone, tapping away at it like a bird at a sea tray, talking to all her New York friends, no doubt complaining bitterly about her sorry state, being trapped on a horse ranch with me. If that wasn't revealing enough, even Golden Sun and my 2 cats gave her a wide berth, regarding her with secret looks of disdain. The ranch kitchen literally looked like a catastrophe after I married Alexa, worse than when I actually lived on my own. Forget the feminine touch, there wasn't one. It looked like a bomb had blown up in the place, as every pot and pan had been used by Alexa, often was abandoned and forsaken like a half-drowned kitten on the side of the road. Some so incinerated by having been left on the range for far too long, having nearly brought down the house in flames that had to be abated by my swift, efficient hands using a fire extinguisher. The sink invariably would always be piled high with dirty dishes, which my father would wash because, yes, you've guessed it. "Oh, I can't possibly wash dishes, not with nails like this," she would exclaim. "They'd be ruined. Do you know how much they cost me?" Slowly but surely Alexa would return to New York for fleeting visits with her friends, but her absence from the ranch became longer and longer with every visit. I found when she wasn't around, I could breathe again. One day she didn't come back at all, but a month later I did receive the divorce papers. It didn't upset me at all. In truth, I was heartily relieved. It was finally all over. I never had to see that gal again. I lived in an exquisite part of Colorado, with no neighbours to speak of, in what I would describe as a rare private property, that looks like a superbly maintained park, a tranquil oasis nestled above a huge silvery lake, graced by a sizable dock. The silvery blue water so clear you could see fish swimming around in the lake. I would keep it fully stocked with an abundance of fish like bass, bluegill, catfish, along with a spring-fed river that was accessorized by an attractive but sturdy wrought-iron bridge.
Then there were the voluptuous rocky outcrops scattered close to the lake's edge, gathered together in an undulating collection of smooth, shapely boulders. Their interesting, unique shapes caressed the eye with an appreciation of all things intrinsically sculptural and artistic. But the master of this phenomenal collection was hundreds of years of weather erosion to smooth away the surfaces so meticulously. All these natural, transfixing, prepossessing scenic wonders were illustriously laid beneath the dazzling, vast expanse of a Colorado cobalt blue sky. My huge, sprawling property opened out into a vast private entrance. A quarter of a mile of concrete driveway, fringed by medium-sized trees on one side, surrounded by billowing, oscillatory green fields on the other. Then dotted hither and thither across the sparkling sanctuary were ubiquitous trees clustered together in large congenial groupings. The ranch itself, a sprawling ranch-style home, surrounded by a substantial wraparound porch, overlooking mesmerizing views of the lake. The semicircular driveway on a U-turn leads you further into the heart of the Colorado countryside, passing a couple of chicken coops, RV parking, and as you continue upwards through this blissful verdant oasis, you will find fields of frolicking horses, stables, barns, equestrian rings, you name it, it's all there. The quintessential horse ranch. "Boone Charleston," piped Mrs. Beaver, putting her hand on her hip, looking at me directly through her fiery blue eyes. "Why, I do believe the man is sad to see me go. You don't fool me, son. I can see you're tearing up. Your eyes are so sad. Bless you, dear."
"Of course I'm sad, Mrs. Beaver. What do you expect? You're a huge part of my life. Have been so for 20 long years. Seeing you go like this, well, it's not easy to stomach, let me tell you."
"Oh, Boone," sighed Mrs. Beaver, taking me lovingly into her arms, cupping my face into her hands, while she tugged gently at the dimples on my cheeks. "I'm going to miss you too. I'm going to miss this place. Golden sun, the cats, all the horses. This place has been my home for so long, longer than I can ever remember. I've grown to love it all, and more to the point, love you all. It breaks my heart to have to leave."
"But why do you need to go, then?"
A lonely tear spilled down Mrs. Beaver's cheek, which she hastily wiped away. "You know I need to be with my daughter, Boone. She has breast cancer. I need to be with her during this tumultuous time. She really needs me."
"But you will be coming back, won't you?" I asked eagerly. "Please, Mrs. Beaver, say you'll be coming back. You can bring your daughter here to recuperate after the chemotherapy. The ranch will do her the world of good. I don't want to lose you, Mrs. Beaver."
Mrs. Beaver shook her head of grey curls vigorously. She looked sad. Another tear rolled down her cheek.
"Look what you're doing to me, Boone," she said. "You're making me go all mushy like this inside. I didn't want this to happen before I left. If I'm not careful, I'll be crying more tears than the water is in that lake of yours. No, Boone, I won't be coming back. Yes, I'll come to visit you, but to live, no."
"But why?" I asked, tears accumulating on the fringe of my eyelashes like raindrops. Grown men did not cry, especially a cowboy like myself, but Mrs. Beaver had become like a mother to me. Seeing her go was quite literally breaking my heart.
"I'm not getting any younger, Boone. Otherwise I would snap up your offer in a heartbeat. You know I would."
"I just wish," she said, her voice almost crumbling under the pain of her emotions, like the loose scaffolding on a roof. "I just wish," she said gently. I wish," her voice faded away into such a low tone that it became barely audible. "I wish," she said, straightening herself up so that her unswerving perpendicular back looked as linear as a pencil,
"that you would get yourself a good wife, Boone Charleston. You're a good man. You need a good wife." "You know how I feel about that, Mrs. Beaver," I said, my mind trying to eliminate any stinging, haunting memories of my ex-wife Alexa.
"Well, failing that," she said, opening her purse, pulling out a notebook, tearing out a piece of paper, which she firmly handed to me. I took the liberty of advertising for a live-in housekeeper for you. I interviewed many applicants on your behalf while you were in the fields with your horses. This is the lady I think you should hire. She seems very keen. I think she's in her early 60s. I was terribly impressed with her. She's got all the old Southern values that we admire so much.
but by all accounts is also an excellent southern cook, who assures me she can make the best stew and dumplings on the planet. We know how you love your stew and dumplings, Boone. I took the paper from Mrs. Beaver reluctantly, glancing down at the name. It was true I would need a housekeeper, but there was no one who could fill Mrs. Beaver's shoes. Never, ever. She was irreplaceable, one-of-a-kind type of person that you just couldn't replicate. Flower Macpherson, I read the name out loud. Mrs. Beaver looked at me awkwardly. There's just one problem, Boone. She does have baggage. I raised a quizzical brow. How so? She has 2 grandchildren in her charge, 2 boys to be exact, one about 10, the other going on 12, who have to live with her here on the ranch with you. I see, I said, not liking the idea of 2 kids charging around my ranch like a pair of rambunctious bull terriers, screaming, shouting, whistling. I could only imagine the horrors. Where are the parents? A fatal car accident wiped them out about 8 years ago, I gather. The children have no memory of their parents, so she's become their guardian, so to speak. Sad story. I know what you're thinking, Boone, said Mrs. Beaver, looking at me intently through her pale blue cornflower eyes. What am I thinking, Mrs. Beaver? You're thinking, Boone, that 2 kids would drive you doodle alley. You may be right, but a place like this needs some young blood. A couple of kids running around this ranch of yours might just liven up the place a bit. It would do you good having children around the place. A youthful, whimsical, fresh energy could be just what the doctor ordered. I must admit, once Mrs. Beaver left my ranch, it was as if the sunshine had been vanquished from my home. Nothing was the same. Even Golden Sun, along with my 2 cats, had sunk into a deep depression without her around. My presence was a poor substitute to the spirited, mirthful, and effervescent Miss Beaver. The untidy kitchen was in a dreadful shambles, my lack of culinary prowess conspicuous, along with the accumulation of dirty dishes that graced every available surface. Even a poached chicken I'd cooked for the cats was eyed scathingly and approached with due caution. Gone were the delicious aromas of mac and cheese, biscuits and gravy, apple pie, along with cinnamon buns. In the twinkling of an eye, my once cosy, mellow, cheerful and restful ranch had become like a mausoleum, until I could bear it no more, as the oppressive lonesome energy was completely suffocating. I phoned up Flower Macpherson, offering her the job on the spot, trusting in Mrs. Beaver's instincts about the woman, wilfully resigning myself to my plight of having 2 young boys on my ranch, something I wasn't looking forward to at all, but needs must. I would just have to grin and bear it, rather like that dreaded trip to the dentist twice a year that I would sooner rather avoid. Within a day of Flower Macpherson moving into the ranch, the heavy atmosphere lifted. Granted, she was not Mrs. Beaver, nor would she ever be, but she was a jolly good replacement nevertheless. Even Golden Sun seemed to think so, as once again she was thumping her tail happily on the kitchen floor, and running with gusto after a plethora of tennis balls the 2 young boys zealously threw for her around the lake. It was as if the old dog had recaptured her youth all over again. She would dive into the lake with an enthusiastic fervour to retrieve the sticks the boys threw for her, then climb out of the water, shaking her locks of creamy golden hair so vigorously so no one in sight of her did not escape without a good showering. My 2 cats seemed to gravitate towards Flower, purring profusely, rubbing their sleek bodies against her legs, as if to mark their territory, laying claim of ownership over the woman. Flower Macpherson had a soft southern drawl that rather reminded me of a babbling brook. She was gentle, calming. Her grey hair was tucked away from her face in a bright scarf. Her well-upholstered, rounded figure bustled around the kitchen like a worker bee. Furthermore, she was a sensational, outstanding cook, as delicious smells wafted around the house. My ranch had become a home again. As for the 2 young boys, Lance and Wade, I would give them a wide berth, I thought, but it seemed that they were not adverse to crowding in on my space at any given opportunity, bugging the hell out of me with annoying questions and effusive bursts of excited exuberance. "Mr. Charleston, can I ride the horse?" I would mumble something under my breath, wilfully ignoring the boy. "Mr. Charleston, please can I ride the horse?" Slowly but surely, those 2 loathsome, rambunctious, energetic boys began to steal my heart. At first annoyance morphed into disapproval, then disapproval morphed into tolerance, then tolerance morphed into acceptance, and acceptance morphed into love. It hit me hard like a brick to the head.
That was one day when I realised that I loved these kids as if they were my own flesh and blood. Believe me, no one was more astounded by this startling revelation than myself. Within a short period of time, I had introduced these two energetic, ebullient, industrious and assiduous young boys to every single aspect of ranch life. Outside of their schoolwork, of course, that is. They were natural, pertinacious, unflagging cowboys, destined to follow in my footsteps. They weren't even my own children, yet they loved nothing better than exploring the countryside with me, on horseback, or riding on the back of our ATVs in the woods, or fishing at the lake with me, or even engaging in a good spot of hunting. They solicitously enjoyed it all. Believe me, we had some good times together, very good times. I was beginning to realise that without their presence in my life, life would be a lot less thrilling. "We made a new friend today, Mr. Charleston," said Lance over the large oak table in the kitchen, where we were gathered together to enjoy the evening meal that had been superbly cooked by Flower Macpherson. He said this as he popped a whole new potato into his mouth, gobbling it hungrily, without even bothering about the social graces of actually keeping his mouth shut while he chewed. "He was ever so nice, but he doesn't speak a word of English. He's very, very hairy."
"Oh, so you met Alejandro, I take it. No, he doesn't speak English very well. He's a Mexican immigrant, you see. But to date he's been very handy around the ranch. And yes, I suppose he could do with a shave, come to think of it. He is rather hairy."
"You know him?" asked Lance excitedly. His blue eyes appeared to be dancing up and down with delight. "I really, really like him, Mr. Charleston. He's the most exciting person I've ever met in my entire life, even though he is very hairy." "Oh, he's so cool," nodded Wade in agreement. "And strong, too. Very, very strong." At this bold, startling revelation from the two young boys, I was bewildered, if not a tad jealous, of this effusive, generous outburst of genuine affection directed towards my less than agreeable farmhand. Not to put too fine a point on it, Alejandro Iglesias was, in my opinion, hardly the life and soul of the party. He grumbled a lot, muttered under his breath, approached some of his duties on the ranch with about as much enthusiasm as a bee has over a can of sugarless cola. There were times he had been so disagreeable, cantankerous, belligerent, and downright annoying that I'd even considered giving him his calling cards. But these two kids were beguiled by this less than agreeable man.
"Did he now?"
I said, a rising level of annoyance creeping up in my throat like a congealed fog. My ranch hand had shirked his responsibilities, was taking time off to play with Lance and Wade behind my back when he had so many other jobs he needed to do. How dare he, I thought. I'd have some stiff words with him in the morning, I decided. The following day, Alejandro did not look best pleased when I pulled him to one side for a chat. The frown on his sallow-skinned face visibly deepened, as if he was expecting me to give him a long list of other jobs he needed doing. "Hello, sir," he said to me in his broken English. "What you want?" "Alejandro," I said, "I would appreciate it if you focused on your job at hand. Stop playing with the children." The frown on Alejandro's face became more entrenched, like a railway track. He looked at me with his beady brown eyes, as if he thought I'd lost leave of my senses. He shook his jet-black mane of curls, with a belligerence of note. "You think this is funny? You think this is a joke? Funny?" he sniped. How can I play with my children in Mexico, sir? I wish I could play, but they are far, far away." "I know you played with the children, Alejandro. I know about the fish you caught at the lake." Fish? I don't fish at the lake," said Alejandro. "We will say no more about it," I said, realizing swiftly that Alejandro was not about to confess to anything fast. "I know the children like you, but you've got a job and responsibility on the ranch. I don't pay you to go dilly-dallying around." "Dilly-dally? I don't know who sir he is. I know no dilly-dally. I don't know dilly-dally. I took no fish from lake. Your children, nor my children, are Mexico," he said, rolling his eyes in frustration and willfully ignoring me, as he continued to muck out the stables with a gusto that I was not accustomed to seeing. Over the next few days, the kids kept telling me how wonderful Alejandro was, and it was like a red flag to a bull. It made me more and more enraged. Mr. Charleston, you should have seen the rock he picked up today. I don't even think you could do it, pick up a rock so big. And you're strong, but he threw it into the lake as if it was a pebble. He did it again and again and again, didn't he? It's true, piped Wade excitedly. He picked up dozens of these rocks, Mr. Charleston. He could hit the targets exactly right. He was brilliant. You should have seen him. What targets? I asked. Well, anything we pointed at. He hit it dead on. You know, like landmarks, stuff like that. Now I was getting very flustered. It seemed that Wade and Lance were more than a little enamoured and reverent towards my ranch hand. This revelation was making me like the man less and less and less, if that were at all possible. In the beginning I didn't like him much, but now I positively despised him. More to the point, I loathed him. I realised in horror that an ugly jealousy had seeped through my veins like a rampant cancer, eating me alive from the inside out. It was more than I could bear to see Lance's dewy eyes talking about Alejandra like an illustrious American hero. It made me feel more than a little miffed and hot under the collar to hear all this. The boys were in awe of the idiotic imbecile, idolising him, putting him on a pedestal where he clearly didn't belong, elevating him to the realms of a demigod. It was ridiculous. I was having none of it. I was a damn sight stronger than that piddling, puny, pathetic 160-pound ranch hand of mine. I'd be happy to prove this point to Lance and Wade once and for all, should the need arise. I promise you, Mr. Charleston, continued Lance in a voice of reverent awe, you should have seen him. You should have seen him. You would have never been able to pick up a rock like that in your bare hands. Never, never. Wade interjected. Lance is right, Mr. Charleston. You couldn't lift a rock that size, even if you wanted to. You'd never be strong enough. We'll see about that, I said, the indignant colour rising in my cheeks, turning my face into a deep rosy pink. Why, I do believe you're jealous, laughed Flower, looking at me with a glint of amusement in her eyes. I tell you what, boys, tomorrow after lunch I will show you that I am much stronger than your Alejandra. You tell him to come to the lake, and we'll have a contest together. See who's the strongest. You'll see what I'm talking about. At that, Lance and Wade chuckled with laughter, clearly amused by this crazy idea. You'll never win, Mr. Charleston, chuckled Wade. Never! The following morning I busied myself on the ranch, extending my usual courtesies to a couple of the ranch hands on duty. I'll see you later, Alejandra. I'm looking forward to it at the lake, I said, giving him a wry, knowing grin. He looked at me, shook his head, muttered something under his breath that I couldn't hear. Thereupon I chose to arrive at the lake promptly after lunch, eager to show off my physical prowess. Not over here, Mr. Charleston, piped Lance. Our friend doesn't like to be seen close to the house. I bet he doesn't, I thought angrily to myself. He doesn't want to be caught shirking on his duties at the ranch. I could have guessed as much. I'd begun to realise that not only was Alejandra incredibly grouchy, but he was a sly, duplicitous character as well. I followed the two excitable boys by foot over the undulating countryside to a secluded part of the lake, fringed by weeping willows with graceful boughs that cascaded into the water like overlong leafy arms. Over here, Mr. Charleston, said Lance, giving me a bright big grin. He was pointing at these massive boulders lying loosely by the side of the lake. You think you could lift one of these stones, Mr. Charleston? Bet you can't. I looked across at Wade with a nonplussed expression on my face. Is this some kind of a joke, Lance, because I don't find it funny? There is no way it's humanly possible to lift a stone this size and throw it into the lake. Our friend can. No, he can't. No, he can't. He's coming, whispered Lance excitedly. He's coming. You'll see. I groaned inwardly. On the outside, I feigned a smile as we waited for my competitor to approach. I could hear a hefty footfall thumping the ground with a ponderous vibration. Then someone was pulling back the curtains of the long leafy willows. At first I saw an arm, and then a face peering at me nervously. Then I saw him, all 8 foot 700 pounds of him. This was not Alejandra like I'd expected. This was a bloody Bigfoot. I was so stunned that I froze like a rock-hard statue. I tried to say something, but all that came out of my mouth was a silly squeak that made me sound more like a mouse than a man. I struggled to find words, but they eluded me, as did my ability to get the hell out of this place.
for it seemed that my muscles were twitching in a series of spasms. I was powerless to do anything about it. Lance ran excitedly towards the Bigfoot, who looked so incredibly human it was almost uncanny. He pointed at the stones and then at me. The deep-set dark eyes of the creature twinkled with amusement, as if he understood perfectly what was going on. I did, however, discern that he was slightly wary of my guarded energy. Lance and Wade were like an open book to him, while I was enigmatic. It would seem that my trepidation and angst had not gone unnoticed by him. He was eyeing me with a degree of suspicion, as if he doubted that I could be fully trusted. I was stunned by how calm Lance and Wade were about their Bigfoot friend, who, although massively large, had a juvenile energy about him, suggesting to me that he was possibly just a teenager. Could they not see how potentially dangerous he was? Could they not discern that although he looked remarkably human, he certainly was anything but? I mean, this thing was massive in girth and size and weight, with overlong arms, powerful slender legs, a pyramid-shaped head, a human face, leathery skin, deep-set eyes. He was swathed generously from head to toe with long flowing dark brown hair that was scant under the arms and on the knees. This anomalous creature glided over to the stones deliberately, picking one large one up. The stone must have weighed a ton, but the creature picked it up without any struggle, as if it was as light as a pebble. "You see that tree over there?" said Lance, pointing it out to the Bigfoot. "Over there. I want you to directly throw it over there." I watched in awe as the creature, understanding exactly what the kids wanted from him, was all too eager to oblige their every need. He hurled the stone towards the trunk of a large tree, hitting his target seamlessly. The hefty stone whacked the tree, then flew backwards, descending into the depths of the lake. I could hardly believe it. What an extraordinary shot! "Your turn, Mr. Charleston," said Wade, looking eager. "You keep telling us how strong you are. You keep saying you can do it. It's your turn now." "I'm not sure, Wade, that this is a very good idea after all," I said, as all eyes, including the Bigfoot's, were now pinned directly on me. I moved towards the hefty stone, but I couldn't budge it from the ground. Lance, Wade, and the Bigfoot began to laugh, and yes, if you must know, Bigfoots can laugh. I saw his jaw open wide, his teeth displayed in their full glory. He was bobbing his jaw up and down, while a deep guttural throaty gurgle emerged from the depths of his throat. I could see that he was finding my inability to even lift the stone as amusing as both of the kids did. "I told you couldn't do it, Mr. Charleston," they giggled. "I told you could never lift a stone that large, but you really seem to think you would be able to." The Bigfoot looked at me with a twinkle in his eyes, but in their depths I could detect a glimmer of empathy, as if he felt sorry for me. In that second my heart melted towards him. I could see that this teenage Bigfoot clearly had a heart of gold. I regret to say that the Bigfoot was not on our ranch for very long. It appeared that his whole family are like nomads, never overstaying their welcome in any one place, which was devastatingly sad for the two children, who missed their hairy friend very much, who had brought them so much joy in their short acquaintance. I asked those two kids if I might adopt them, and they didn't hesitate to become my adopted children, making me a very happy man indeed. They're grown up now and live on my ranch with their own families on different houses on the property, and the three of us run the family business together. Sadly, their grandmother passed away 10 years ago, and within 2 days of her death, so did my best friend, Mrs. Beaver. Both are sorely missed, lovingly remembered. However, those two boys are as good as my own sons, better even, so I consider myself a very lucky man indeed. So there you are. That's my story. Wow, what an incredible story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Until next time, goodbye and good night.